Jai Om Vishnupada Paramamsa Parijakacharya Ashtottara Saraswati Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupada Paramamsa Parijakacharya Ashtottara Saraswati Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Ki Samaveda Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Okay. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Chapter 16. The Divine and Demoniac Natures. Text 21. Tri-vidhaṁ narakasyedaṁ dvāraṁ nāśanam ātmanaḥ kāmaḥ krodhas tathā lobhas tasmād etat trayaṁ tyajet tri-vidhaṁ of three kinds. Narakasya of hell, idam this, dvāraṁ gate, nāśanam destructive, ātmanaḥ of the self, kāmaḥ lust, krodhaḥ anger, tathā as well as, lobhaḥ greed, tasmād therefore, etat these, trayaṁ three, tyajet one must give up. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. There are three great gates leading to this hell: lust, anger and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Purport. The beginning of demoniac life is described herein. One tries to satisfy his lust, and when he cannot, anger and greed arise. A sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demoniac life must try to give up these three enemies, which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhushtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Please excuse my tardiness. I actually skipped my mind that I have to give Bhagavad Gita class. So I'm shooting from the hip. So please, I'm apologizing in advance if it's not very well put together. It's a very small purport. Very simple. Prabhupada is just explaining more or less just the verse, you know. He's just translated the verse with a few more words. So there are these three gates leading to hell: lust, anger and greed. And unless and until you give them up, for sure your soul will be in a very degraded state and it will keep gliding lower and lower. Prabhupada says in many places that the main fear of existence in the material world is the fear of gliding down into the animalistic species of life. And this generally happens when we stop acting like human beings and completely given to the senses. Actually, this lust is the cause of everything. It's the cause of this whole material existence. It's also the cause of the spiritual existence, but that's a different story. This lust is where sense gratification roots from, the desire to enjoy your senses separately from Krishna. This is lust. This is kāmaḥ. And this kāmaḥ is never satisfied. It is never, it's just never good enough. As hard as you try, this material world it's just designed in such a way that it's designed to frustrate you. This material world is a place for who are lusty, and when you come here, you try and fulfill your lust, then it leads to the next anartha of anger. These are vices. There's actually 6 of them, as Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada has explained. Lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, and illusion. These are the 6 vices. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes in a song that these 6 vices, they've got me around my neck with tight ropes. They're like, he calls them highway robbers. Highway robbers? There's this road from Barsana to Govardhan. This road apparently is a little famous for highway robbers, because what highway robbers do is, even if you have a car, they'll just stand in front of you, so unless you want to kill them, you'll stop, and then when you stop, they'll come and just rob you. They have weapons and they'll just strip you down of everything. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur compares these 6 vices to be like highway robbers, and they've got me by with a rope by my neck, 6 persons, and they're pulling me in this direction and that direction, and I'm simply helplessly following their demands, following their instructions. So these things, these vices, they're very difficult to change, and Krishna consciousness philosophy is that nothing has to be given up. Everything can be used in service of the Lord. And we know, Prabhupada said in Bhagavad Gita also, how anger was used by Hanuman, and anger was used by I'm forgetting. He always uses 2 examples. Who? Arjun, yes, killing on the battlefield. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita, Jai. So this anger also has its place in Krishna consciousness. Hanuman was angry because Ravan was such a demon that he kidnapped, Mother Sita. He kidnapped his worshipable Lord's consort. And this is very, very disturbing. If someone is offending Guru, Krishna and Vaishnavas, then anger must be employed in devotional service. And when anger is employed in this way, then the energy of anger is depleted. So your material anger won't have any room because the cup is full, so to speak. Hanuman, when he went, actually he was instructed by Lord Ram when he was going. He was just going to see, right? Just to see what's happening and come back and inform me. He was instructed by Lord Ram specifically that please don't do anything. Just go over there, see the situation and come back and just inform. But how can you do this? When you go and you see the man, actually it's described in Valmiki Ramayana that when he went, he saw a huge palace, and he saw that Ravana, speaking of lust, he was the epitome of lust. He was really lust personified. He had 1 wife of every species of life. Yeah, so he had 8.4 million wives. I don't even know how that works, but that's what Valmiki Ramayana says. that he had, I don't know, a mosquito wife, a dog wife, I have no idea, but this is what it says. And when Ravana went to the palace, he went at night, right? So there was, sorry, this is after meeting with Sita. He went and saw Ravana, or before, I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Just, anyway, try and catch the message. He went to a huge palace and he saw different beds, like many beds. And all the beds had a woman sleeping, and he's a brahmachari. A brahmachari must not look at women, especially when they're sleeping. And they're sleeping and their clothes are all moved around. But he just folded his hands and he said, I'm here to find Sita. So he actually pulled each cloth and he checked their faces, like, oh, this is not Sita, this is not Sita, this is not Sita. And like that, he realized that, my God, this Ravana has so many wives, and finally he came to like the main crest jewel room where Ravana was lying down. And it says that he had such a huge, strong body, Ravana, that when Hanuman saw it, Hanuman thought, wow, this would be so nice to fight with. His natural instinct of fighting came, and some anger started to come, but he controlled himself. And then in that bed, next to the bed, he saw another bed with another personality lying down. And I don't remember the purport of why this happened. There's some explanation. Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, in his book, he's written a little book called Ramayana. He gives the explanation. When he sees Mandodari, he actually thinks it's Sita for 1 second, And when he sees her, he thinks, oh, maybe this is Sita. I think the explanation that he gave was that that you're so attached to your Ishtadev that you always see your Ishtadev everywhere. But then when he came close, he could smell alcohol. He could smell intoxicants. And that's when he knew, no, this also cannot be Sita. And then we know how he went outside and finally, found her and gave her the ring and so on and so forth. But he was done. He found Sita. He sent Sita the message that Ram is coming, don't worry, everything's done. Now he just had to go back. But no, he could have gone back at that point. He went and challenged Ravana, This is very much a preacher's mood. You see Srila Prabhupada, when he's speaking, he really doesn't hold back. Especially when people come, outside persons. With his disciples, he was very compassionate, very merciful. But you watch these videos in Melbourne and different places where people come, like a social welfare worker will come, and he just doesn't hold back. He doesn't even have to be so rude, but to establish a point, to establish that bhakti is the supreme, and all of these other things, they're all nonsense. Social welfare is nonsense. If there's no Krishna in the equation, it's all nonsense. And he'll just straight up say to the person, there's one conversation you can watch in Melbourne. There's a social welfare worker man, and he's explaining what he's doing, and Prabhupada is just telling him, the problem is that all of you are women hunters and drunkards. He's just telling him right to his face. The problem is that you are in trouble. And if you are in so much trouble, how are you going to do social welfare work? And this man is saying, no, that is not our policy. Drinking and women hunting, that is a separate thing. He's saying, no, it's not a separate thing. You're illusioned and you're trying to take people that are suffering out of suffering. First you have to fix yourself. His physician, heal thyself. He says this, his famous words. And then this man, he's speaking, and then Prabhupada says, yes, our restrictions is no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And then he's saying, if you are killing innocent animals, where is the question of compassion? Where is the question of doing welfare work when behind closed doors you're slaughtering animals? And then when he speaks about no illicit sex, this man, he says, I like sex. What is your problem? He says, I like sex. My wife likes sex. I like these things. And then Prabhupada stops speaking to him and he starts speaking to his disciples in front of him, and he says, just see this man. This is the person who's going to do social welfare work. He completely starts ignoring him at that point, and he's just speaking to his disciples and saying, see, so this is the example of the material world. These are the people that are running the world. Really doesn't hold back. This man, you can see he's boiling inside. He's getting so offended because he's being treated like such dirt. But Prabhupada is fearless to establish what is absolute, what is the truth, you know, what is Krishna consciousness, the social welfare and all these things. It's not. So you can see there's some kind of shadowy reflection of anger also when Prabhupada is speaking in this way. You know, he's angry. He's angry at the Mayavadis. He's angry at actually mostly they're all Mayavadis, you know. They're even the sense gratifiers to some degree. They're ignoring Krishna. Ignoring Krishna is impersonalism. When you ignore someone, you're being impersonal with them. You're not sharing your personal reciprocation with them. Krishna is reciprocating with every single jiva and this entirety of creation. And when you ignore him, this is a form of impersonalism. So Prabhupada is actually smashing this, you know, nirvishesha shunyavadi. That's what he's come to do. It's very interesting that Prabhupada in his own pranam mantra, and Prabhupada wrote it himself because he didn't have any qualified disciples to present. Generally, the disciple will write a pranam mantra and offer it to the spiritual master, and the spiritual master approves or disapproves. But in Prabhupada's case, because he was alone, you know, he had no one, he kind of had to just make it himself. Prabhupada did many things that's never before seen or heard of because he's the Acharya. I was standing in front of Gaur Nitai, and then it hit me that Prabhupada installed himself in the altar. You know, you can see the videos. He really installed himself. I don't know if and did arati as well, right? Of himself. This can be very easily misunderstood. But you have to understand, he knew who he was, he knew his position as the Acharya, and he knew how silly everyone else was to not understand his position as the Acharya. So he had to do these things for actually his compassionate nature that he did these things. But yeah, nirvishesha shunyavadi paschatya deshatarine. Prabhupada says in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita how different acharyas have different functions. And then he quotes Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada give me his 2 lotus feet? You know, when will that Srila Rupa Goswami, who's understood the heart and mind of Lord Chaitanya, who's trying to establish it throughout the whole world, the heart of Lord Chaitanya, when will that personality, Dadati Swapadantikam, give me in charity his 2 lotus feet? And Prabhupada comments in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says that the special function of Srila Rupa Goswami is that he came to establish Lord Chaitanya's desires, which is the compassionate nature, is Lord Chaitanya's mercy, to spread all over the 3 worlds, you know, not just this planet, but everywhere. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that I will jump and chant and dance in satisfaction when the whole 14 planetary system is dancing in Harinam Sankirtan. You know, and anyway, there he says how this was Rupa Goswami's special function. So you see, our Prabhupada, he had such a special function, and no one will ever do it ever again because it's already done. He's established Gaudiya Vaishnavism throughout the whole world, and he's completely kicked out impersonalism and voidism by sometimes using anger also, you know. Anyway, so Hanuman goes and challenges Ravan, you know, and he's challenging Ravana, and then it says there that Ravana sees him, and immediately he instructs his soldiers and whatnot to tie him up, to tie up this person, and then it says there that Hanuman, you know, because he had mystic siddhis, he was expert in all the ashta siddhis, he made his tail so it became a asan, and that asan was bigger than Ravana's asan, and he put it right next to Ravana's asan, and he put a huge long asan next to him, and he sat looking down, like saying like, oh, hi Ravana, hi down there, you know, really taunting him. And then he was like just messing with a monkey, try and catch a monkey. It's not easy to catch a monkey. This monkey is a very special monkey, but nevertheless a monkey, you know. And then finally he submitted himself, you know, and he allowed them to tie himself. And they burnt his tail. And when they burnt his tail, Hanuman was very happy because Ramchandra told Hanuman, don't do anything. Don't make any problem there. But now they have burnt my tail. And I'm just a monkey. I'm going to jump from one building to another. That's my swadharma, right? But they have burnt my tail. So then he jumped from one place to another with his tail just very perfectly burning everything, burnt the whole Lanka, and Prabhupada uses that as an example of anger, how he burnt Lanka entirely. So these things, you cannot escape: lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion. they're inbuilt, comes with the part and parcel of living life. There's an article in The Harmonist from 1927, which is entitled, it's not written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, but he was the editor at that time, 1927, which means he read through every article and he checked editor, right? You have to check everything. So obviously it's approved by him. It's entitled, anyway, it's entitled Eroticism and the Jiva. It's a very, very interesting article. You can read it. And there it's explained how lust, to remove lust from the jiva is like removing the jiva altogether. That's the statement that's there. It is not possible to remove these desires from the jiva. Lusty desires, they're inbuilt, they come with the jiva, and you cannot separate lust from the jiva. The only possibility is to transform the lust into love. And what is lust? Lust is a desire for sense gratification. And what is love? What is prema? Prema is a desire for Krishna's sense gratification. So it's the same exact thing. There's also a statement by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he says that if you take Mahaprasad in the mood of enjoying, if you take remnants of the Lord with the idea in your head that, wow, this paneer sabji, this gulab jamun, this rice, this pakora is so nice and it may taste very nice and it may satisfy my tongue, he says, then you will go to hell. Yeah, so it's quite up there. And then he says the desire to taste these Mahaprasads should solely be to understand whether or not Krishna has enjoyed. So when you take Mahaprasad, the idea should be, oh, has Krishna enjoyed this? How has he enjoyed this gulab jamun? And how has he enjoyed this paneer sabji and whatnot? And as a byproduct, you're enjoying it anyway, you know, because you're putting the thing in your mouth and you're tasting it, and it tastes nice. But the consciousness is different. The materialist, he will see a flower on the tree and he'll pluck the flower and stick it on his ear. Completely sinful, horrible, poor plant, you know, it grew all his life to give that flower to Krishna and now it's on some stool bag's head, you know. But a devotee, he'll see a flower and immediately he'll pluck it and he'll go and place it on Krishna's head. The desire is exactly the same, but one is kama and one is prema. Prema is actually spiritual lust. You know, this is what the article very nicely explains. And that's the understanding. Anger, we know how anger is used. Greed, you have to be very greedy for Krishna consciousness. You have to be extremely, actually it is the only qualification to really enter into the real goal of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is greed. Greed is the answer. Lobha mai shraddha. There are two types of shraddha. There's Shastriya Shraddha and there's Lobhamai Shraddha. Shastriya Shraddha is coming from what you read in Shastra, coming from the instructions of the spiritual master. You hear the spiritual master says no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, and chant 16 rounds. So Shastriya Shraddha means you do these things because I heard it and this is what Shastra says, this is what the Guru says. And this will give you liberation. It'll take you out of this material world, and it may even take you to Vaikuntha, which is very nice, Jai Vaikuntha, but it's not going to take you to Vrindavan. It's not going to take you to Brajendra Nanda and Shyam Sundar. It's not going to take you to the two personalities that are standing there in our temple room. You know, actually 4 personalities, actually 6 personalities. All of them are very much in Vrindavan only. None of them are in Vaikuntha. Gaur Nitai are not in Vaikuntha. Krishna Balaram are not in Vaikuntha. Radhe Shyam, Lalita Vishaka are not in Vaikuntha. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada sitting next to Gaur Nitai, they're also not in Vaikuntha. So if you want to get to them, then you need Lobhamai Shraddha. Lobhamai Shraddha is based on attraction. It's based on hearing the pastimes of the Lord, also from the Guru. But it is not the restrictive instructions that he gives you. It is the positive. It's the inspiring pastimes, the inspiring Krishna Katha, the inspiring kirtans that you experience, the inspiring just general Krishna consciousness. When you experience that, then when you hear the pastimes of the Lord and you see how beautiful Krishna is, you hear how beautiful Krishna is, you chant his name, which is so beautiful, you hear his beautiful pastimes, then naturally, Krishna consciousness is a natural affair. It is not an artificially imposed imposition of the mind, as Prabhupada says. You know, it is natural to the soul. So what is natural? Vaidhi Bhakti is not natural. Vaidhi Bhakti is imposed onto the soul. Rag Bhakti is natural. And this greed, when you have this greed, that is the only qualification. Jaiva Dharma, the question is asked, what is the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti? People hear the word Raganuga Bhakti and they become all like, oh, this is too high and this is not, we're not ready for it. Okay, that's nice to have that consciousness. But also you should know, why did Lord Chaitanya come? There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which says, Prem Ras Niryase Horite Aswadan. To taste the rasa of prem, Lord Chaitanya has come. That's the internal reason. And the external reason, Rag Marg Bhakti Loke. Loke means the whole planet, the whole world. Korite Pracharan. Preaching. But preaching what? Preaching Rag Marg Bhakti throughout the whole planet. So we're not going to be satisfied in Vrindavan Dham, chanting our rounds and doing whatever, unless the desire to preach Rag Marg throughout the whole planet is not coming in our hearts. And you can't preach something until you know it. You can't preach something that you don't know about. You can't preach something that you have no experience of. So Krishna consciousness, real preaching of Krishna consciousness, begins by fully understanding what Rag Bhakti is, experiencing it. Do you know when you taste something very nice, then it is a natural reaction that you tell others about this thing, whatever it may be, something mundane, like, I don't know, they have a new pizza shop here. I went to Radhakund the other day, and Radhakund, the pinnacle of devotion, there's now a pizza shop there. It's called Pizza King. Gaur Haribol. Why'd you go to Radhakund? To eat some pizza. Anyway, the point is that you taste something very nice, whatever it may be, a pizza, a cake, or whatever. Naturally, the reaction is you tell others about it because you experience the thing. And then when you share your experience, the impact of your words is so much more powerful because, oh, this guy is experiencing this. So similarly on the preaching platform, this is how our preaching should be. It should be based on this lobhamai shraddha. It should be based on rag marg, because rag, the word rag means attraction. Krishna means all attractive. So Krishna means rag. You know, if you want to get to Krishna, you need greed. You need very intense, not just a little bit of greed. You need it to take over your whole life, that you don't think of anything else. Every second of every 24 hours of every day of every month of every year of your life, constantly it is eating you up inside and you can't live anymore. And you come to the point, anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya vivarjanam. You come to the point where this body becomes pratikul. It becomes unfavorable. Actually, these bodies are not fit to perform any real devotional service on the actual platform. Obviously, we're purifying our senses. Doesn't mean you just stop. And you slowly qualify yourself further and further and further. But Prabhupada has explained that if you want to enter into the sun planet, you need to have a fiery body. You need to have qualities of the sun. So similarly, if you want to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you need to have a body like that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And until and unless you don't reach that platform, everything that you're doing is bhakti abhas. Obviously, if you do perform pure devotional service, if you do chant Shuddha Nam, then immediately even your body becomes transcendental. That is why for great personalities like the Acharyas, like Srila Prabhupada, we don't burn their bodies, because their bodies are not considered material. Their bodies are Satchidananda. They are completely transcendental. And so we give them samadhi. You know, all the bona fide Acharyas, they were never burnt. Although sometimes, somehow, for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his body was burnt. And also, very interestingly, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, his body was also burnt. But then his ashes were taken, half were taken to Radhakund, and half were taken to the 64 samadhis here in Vrindavan, and they were placed there. Anyway, the point is that their bodies are not material, because they were fully engaged in activities of Krishna consciousness. And this is possible for us also, to completely spiritualize this body. But until then, all the bhakti that you're performing is actually, to some degree, pratikul. It is not yet anukul. Anukul will only be when your body is completely spiritualized. So, lust, anger, greed, pride is difficult, because it comes very fast, and it stops us from chanting Harinam. But it is very easily dovetailed when you have such a wonderful family. When you take initiation into the Gaudiya Sampradaya, you can be extremely proud about our spiritual masters. You can be extremely proud. You know, Mayapur was known as Miyapur. It was like how all the Muslims came and changed all the names. They changed Mayapur's name also. It was called Miyapur. And Srila Prabhupada's sannyas guru, Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, he was established as the temple president. I don't know what they call it. The acharya of the main mutt in Mayapur. And he saw that there was this huge cemetery, you know, and it was right where Mayapur is, and everyone's calling this place Miyapur. It was really disheartening to him. He was not satisfied at all. So as soon as he became the manager of the place, the first day itself, that night, he uprooted all these bodies. I don't know where he put them, but he took them all out, and it was a huge place. And he got huge trees, huge plants, flowers, like flowering plants, and he made a garden. Who thinks like this, you know? Disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that's who thinks like this. Who thinks that, okay, let me just uproot all of this and put trees and plants and make a beautiful forest, a garden. He made a wonderful garden, and then the Muslims that were residing there, obviously they were very upset. They were extremely upset. And they went there, and then they complained to the police, and they tried to make some retaliation. And the police and the officials, they came, but when they came, they saw this beautiful garden, and they were like satisfied. They were satisfied with the garden. And from that day onwards, everyone started calling that place Mayapur. You know, they stopped calling it Miyapur. So you can be proud about such a personality. Such a personality. He's the sannyas guru of our Srila Prabhupada. You know, this is our family. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, look at what he did. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, look at what he did. You know, you read their lifetime, you read their whole journey. Prabhupada, look at what he did. Went on a boat by himself, did what he did. We're all here today because of him. So this is something to be very proud about. We can be very proud about our Gaudiya lineage, our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And in that way, you don't think of yourself, and you think in terms of serving this parampara. You think in terms of you know, what they want. Lust, anger, greed, pride, envy. Envy, actually, there's no room for envy in Krishna consciousness, unfortunately. This one you just have to cancel. This one exists only in this material world. There is jealousy, as Prabhupada is described. There is competitiveness in the spiritual world, which you could say is like a dull representative, not dull, bright representative of envy in this material world. It's, that's used in Krishna consciousness in that way. Like in Mayapur one time, two devotees were fighting. Someone wanted to offer a rose, and someone wanted to offer a lotus flower, and they both started fighting with each other because one wanted to offer a rose and one wanted to offer a lotus flower. And then Prabhupada very much appreciated this, actually. He said, this is very good. But the solution was, why don't you offer a rose and a lotus flower? But at least the rasa, Krishna would have enjoyed that also. You know, Krishna would have enjoyed observing these two devotees fighting over which flower should get offered to me. This is very nice, real representation of you know, jealousy. But envy is coming from the platform of just not very nice, very, very horrible. This whole existence of material world is based on this lust and envy. And illusion or madness sometimes, matsara, right? Kama, lobha, moha, what is it? Kama. Anyway, matsara. Prabhupada, some places he translates it as illusion, and in other places I've seen he translates it as madness. This one has a lot of room in Krishna consciousness. This madness, actually we're supposed to be transcendental madmen, completely in love with Krishna. You know, the Goswamis, they were walking around in their kopans. They were walking around chanting Hari Nam. They were walking around being friendly with the most low-grade, rotten drunkard, and with the most elevated of Vaishnavas. They were not discriminating in any sense. They were simply like madmen, actually, just walking around Vrindavan, purifying everything around them. And Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says in one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the whole material world is filled with madness. And he says that, and then he says that every single living entity is completely mad. This is just what he says, and he just leaves it at that. Doesn't really further expand. Somewhere in the 4th canto. And well, if you look at it, every single living entity is completely mad. What about all the spiritual living entities? They're also living entities. But one is madly in love with how to gratify my senses, and the other one is madly in love with how to serve Krishna. You know, the gopis are running to Krishna, and they're putting their bottom part of the dress on top, the top part of the dress on the bottom. They're putting kajal on their toes. They're putting whatever alta in their eyes. and Prabhupada says in one place that they in haphazardness, sometimes Radha and Krishna are dressed like children have dressed them. Prabhupada says this, and it says, but yet it looks very beautiful. So this is madness. Spiritual world is full of madness. The way they are, I mean, if you read Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's complete madness, you know. Mahaprabhu is there, and they're doing kirtan, and then Nitai knocks on the door, and they open the door, and Nitai is standing completely naked, you know. This is like society. There's grihastas, it's a town, you know, there's people, there's social etiquette, and there's a naked man just standing there, and it's not just any naked man, but it's naked Nitai, you know. Everyone knows him. Everyone knows. If you read Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's so nice because there's always a clash between Advaita Acharya and Nitai. Always. Like, whatever the pastime is, somehow or other, they'll find a reason to fight with each other. And Mahaprabhu relishes this very much. You know, and they know this also. They know that Mahaprabhu relishes this clash. But he'll come naked like this, and Advaita Acharya will become furious, and he'll say, what is this? You know? Just because you walk around with Mahaprabhu, just because you walk around with Nimai, you think you can do whatever you want. Just because he accepts you, you think you can just roam around naked, do whatever you want. And he's completely naked, he's ignoring Advaita Acharya's screams, and he's just saying, oh Krishna, where are you? Where are the cows? The cows have gone, let's go and catch them, blah blah blah. He's just speaking completely transcendental madness, you know, entering into Vrindavan Leela in the mood of Balaram. So this is we shouldn't imitate it, but like I said before, Krishna consciousness is natural. It should be naturally performed. You know, sometimes these Ashtasattvika bhavs, they manifest. Like even in Prabhupada's case, they did manifest. There are some lectures where Prabhupada sat down on the Vyasasan, he chanted Jai Radha Madhava, and that's it. He didn't say anything further. He would just... Yes, go for it. Yeah, close. No problem. He would sit there and then just start crying, and then he would say, "Thank you very much. I'm sorry," and he would get up and leave. There were many times, few times that this happened. In the platform of very elevated Krishna consciousness, there are 4 ingredients that mix together with your constitutional nature towards Krishna. It's called Vibhav, Anubhav, Sattvika Bhav, and Vyabhichari Bhavs. These are the 4 ingredients of rasa. This is on a very elevated platform. But for the sake of knowing, it's good to know these things. It's good to know what's coming up, hopefully, very soon. especially in Vrindavan. You know, one lifetime in one year in Vrindavan is equal to 12 lifetimes of devotional service. Recently we had Srimad Bhagavatam class, the Krita Punya Punja verse, that you need many, many lifetimes of pious activities, spiritual pious activities, to come to the platform of playing with Krishna. A very intelligent thing to do is to come and live in Vrindavan, because 1 year is 12 lifetimes. You live 10 years in Vrindavan, that's 120 lifetimes. So you can live many, many lifetimes in Vrindavan and try and make it one lifetime instead. Anyway, I lost my chain of thought. What was I saying before Krita Punya Punja? Do you remember? Vibhav, Anubhav, Sattvika Bhav and Vyabhichari Bhav. Anyway, I'll just go through Sattvika Bhav and Anubhav and Sattvika Bhav. Anubhav is these ecstatic symptoms that manifest, but intelligence is still involved in Anubhav. So there may be hair standing on end, there may be tears coming out of the eyes, there may be, all these symptoms, but they can be checked, they can be controlled. So the intelligence is still active, and the intelligence can push the tears back into your eye sockets, and they can stop you from shaking and whatnot. But then there's Sattvika Bhavs, which is described that it goes past the intelligence. It goes completely beyond the intelligence, and there's no more control anymore. There's no more, you don't have a handle over it. And for example, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, when he heard that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, how Krishna accepted Putana as his mother, then this ingredient, the Sattvika Vikars, the Sattvika Bhavs actually manifested, and he couldn't control himself anymore. And this presentation, when it's real, when it's natural, it can change your heart. If you observe such an ordeal, it can really change your heart. When it's imitated, it is so disgusting. You just feel like going away. When you see a fully grown man crying, but it's artificial, it is very disgusting. It's really pathetic actually. But when you see the same thing, when it's naturally coming from the heart, like Prabhupada sitting on the asana and just not able to speak, but him not able to speak was the best class that he gave, because everyone was seeing a practical example of, wow, this Krishna consciousness really does have an effect. Prabhupada one time was in Melbourne, and someone told him that what so many swamis and gurus have come over so many years, what can you do? Like a challenging way to say that. So many gurus and Vivekananda and all these guys, they all came, nothing happened. What are you going to do? And Prabhupada just went into the mic and he just said, I can stop death. And there was pin drop silence. No one spoke anything further, and that was it. That was the class. Everyone took prasad and went home. They understood that this is the real deal. Anyway, it's 6:30. I do apologize for my haphazard, all over the place, helter-skelter class. Please forgive me for that, but hopefully you took something out of it. If there's any questions or comments. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, you were speaking about the Goswamis. The Goswamis never discriminated anything. Or whatever they saw Krishna everywhere. So, how the devotees who are practicing Krishna consciousness, they can see as Goswamis saw?
Well, what I was quoting was Dhira, Dhira, Jana, Priya Karo. They were loved by Dhira and Adhira personalities, and they were not discriminating in the sense that based on their, people discriminate based on their personal sense gratification. If it is favorable for my sense gratification, then you're very good. If it is unfavorable for my sense gratification, then you're very bad. This is how people discriminate. This kind of discrimination is rejected, but absolute, right? That's what we're talking about. Absolutes, lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion, all these things can be used in Krishna consciousness. So discrimination also has its place. We definitely don't like Mayavadis. It's quite clear. We discriminate against them and what they say because they're stopping the sense gratification of Krishna. We don't like that. Krishna demands his sense gratification right now and he has to get it. Yeah, so we discriminate on that platform, but we don't discriminate for ourselves. Prabhu, was it?
So, Prabhu, yeah, in our movement we have a couple of books I saw, Brahmacharya and Krishna Consciousness by Bhakti Swami and Brain Game by Damir Goswami.
Which one?
Brain Game.
Bring in.
Brain Game by Damir Goswami. Damir Goswami. So, Bhagavatam 12th canto says that in Kali Yuga, Brahmacharis will be unclean. So again, Bhagavatam says, Brahmachari Gurukule Vasantanto Garu Gurudikam Ashram. Get Gurus. So, but my practical experience very difficult
To be clean?
to be a Brahmachari, and especially in our movement also there are so many women, but Prabhupada of course gave very valid reasons that they are also spirit souls and they are coming to Krishna. But very difficult for the man to remain a Brahmachari. Again, Prabhupada gave solution, get all the women married, all the brahmacharis should remain brahmacharis and so on. But the thing just doesn't end, it looks like it just goes on. So, how do we maintain this principle of purity of thought, mind, brain, as well as the fourth principle in illicit sex life?
Well, Prabhu, the ideal would be that all women get married and all men remain brahmachari. But if a brahmachari is not engaged in full Krishna consciousness, which is the main problem really, more than anything, people are not engaged. You know, our work, Prabhu, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas is quite extensive. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. We have to strain our brain to think of new and found ways to preach Krishna consciousness all over the three worlds. You know, that's really our mission statement more than anything else. And if your mind is absorbed in this, Prabhupada was asked, are you lusty? Prabhupada was just straight up asked, are you lusty? And he responded, yes, but I have no time for it. So this is the perfect understanding that of course you're lusty. You're in the material world. You came here, you know, you have lusty desires. It's natural. Someone told Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, I have no lust. And Prabhupada's response was, what is wrong with you? Something's wrong with this guy. Because lust is there. It's not going away anytime soon. It's gonna stay with you. Like I said, lust is integral as part of the jiva. You can't take it out. But when you're fully engaged in the mission of the spiritual master, which is very extensive, it's not just chant your 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles, go for Mangalarti and that's it. No. You have to spend all of your time and all of your energy in finding ways to preach bhakti. And if you do that, then there's some hope and you won't be entangled into lust. But if you're living like an animal, externally on the plea of being a brahmachari or a brahmacharini or whatever, then better to get married and become a human being. And if you become a human being, you know, people are distracted. The grihastha ashram is a mode of goodness distraction. It is a regulated distraction. You get married and you follow the tenets of Shastra and you be a grihastha, and then you go through the understanding of how this petty sex life is so worthless actually. You know, there's a lecture by Gaur Govinda Maharaj. It's very nice. You can hear it. Hearing from him would be better. But he says that, oh, like, he says to some brahmachari in the class, oh, brahmachari, you want to get married? He says, brahmachari, you want to get married? And he's like, making him on the spot, you know. But then he says, so, you know, to get married, you need a house. You need a griha, that is grihastha, right? You need to build an ashram. He says, to build an ashram, then you have to get a job. And to get a job, in the material world, you'll need some education. You're just some brahmachari. So you have to go through college 4, 5, 6, 7 years of whatever, studying something so you can qualify yourself. Then you have to get a job and work under some, you know, some crazy karmi guy. Maybe you're lucky you get some devotee. But, and then he says, and then you have to get a wife, because you have a house and you have money and you get a wife. And then the wife will demand many things, like she wants cloth, she wants jewelry or whatnot. And your dharma as a husband is to provide these things. And then he says, and then you'll have to get children. And then when you get children, your child, he will fall sick sometimes. Then you have to force feed him medicine and he will not take this medicine. These are the exact words. This is how he presented it, you know. And then he says, and like this your whole day will go through you'll go through your whole day with all these activities, and finally you lie down in your bed. And then he says, will you think of Krishna? So it's kind of like a big distraction, but it's the price you have to pay for 10 seconds of enjoyment if you want to be a human being. If you want to be an animal, go for it. Degradation to the lower species of life is the greatest fear. Prabhupada says that my only concern is that devotees are not fearful of Maya. Prabhupada said that. So if we're living like animals, we're in a very fearful condition. So be engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Try and find some really active engagement. You know, there are so many temples. I went to a place today called Surya Kund. It's a very beautiful place. Actually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said it was his favorite place in all of Vrindavan. It's a very nice pastime, actually. I'll just say it quickly. When Krishna goes to Radhakund, the gopis go and meet him there in Radhakund. But they need an excuse for their in-laws. They need an excuse. Why are they going in the middle of the day, you know, somewhere? So their excuse is that they're going to do Surya Puja, right? And so they go, but they don't. They just go and meet Krishna in Radhakund. And there's lots of wonderful ecstatic pastimes, sports and dice games and so on and so forth. And then they've concluded the pastimes. Now it's time to go home. But then the gopis think, if we have no signs of puja, like if we have no mark, or, you know, when you do some puja, you get some chandan or something, there should be some sign that we've done some puja. If there's no signs of this puja, then our in-laws will know that we're up to something no good. So then they go to Surya Kund, which is actually very close to Radhakund. It's not so far. They go to Surya Kund, and there is a Brahmin over there, and they do the puja with this Brahmana. And they go to the Brahmana, they say that we don't have much time, we have to go home, and can you quickly do a nice Surya Puja for the welfare of our husbands? So then he says, okay, and he starts doing the rituals, and he chants Sanskrit mantras, right? But while he's chanting those Sanskrit mantras, in between each mantras, suddenly he's adding extra mantras, which is describing the gopis' pastimes with Krishna at Radhakund. And he's doing it little by little. You know, just giving these, and then suddenly he's not even chanting any mantras anymore. He's just extensively describing in detail what exactly happened at Radhakund. And at this point, the gopis are like shocked and bewildered, like what's going on? But then one gopi notices that there's a flute in this Brahmin's kopan, you know, hanging there, and then they realize that it's Krishna, and then they rejoice. And then actually, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Andhakar. Surya Puja means worshipping Krishna. Because Krishna is the sun and Maya is this darkness. Wonderful pastime. But what I was saying is that there is a nice, beautiful temple there, but it's kind of like run down, you know? And it's our temple. There's Prabhupada there, and maybe it's not officially an ISKCON temple, but all you need is good men to go and put energy into such places. Go and perform sankirtan. Go and cook like prasadam and distribute it to people. Don't just sit at home and waste your life. You know, we have to be actively engaged in preaching. So you have to find your niche. You have to find what you're inspired to do, and then just go out there and do it. You don't need money. You don't need anything. You just need firm conviction in the order of the spiritual master, which is what? Which is Rag, Marg, Bhakti, Loke, Korite, Prachar, which is Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. That is the order of the spiritual master. You hold that in your heart. Where is the time for lust? Lust is so insignificant compared to this, compared to the bliss that you experience. So don't be an animal, and don't get married. Get married to the movement. You know. But if you can't do that, then you can fall down onto the safety net of the Grihastha ashram. Jai. Alright. If there's no more questions or comments, then we'll end here. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.